providing is a range from east to west of about 13.5 to 15 feet with this proposal. So if we go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about the landscaping. As I mentioned, the area that staff was most concerned about was the relationship on the east and west property lines, because those are existing properties. We certainly want to protect them because the rear of these buildings will be facing their side yard, which is usually a diminished yard. We want to make sure that there's adequate screening and buffering. Therefore, we required it's not the ordinance allows us to require this. It's not a mandatory requirement. But we have the ability to require this, and staff is recommending it, that we have a 6-foot solid fence running along both the east and west property lines. This is a white PVC fence. I think there's a picture, excuse me, in your staff report, 6 feet tall. But in addition to that, we are making sure that they meet all buffer yard requirements. There's 2 large trees at the south end on the west side that will be preserved. But additional to that, the buffer yard requirements are being met. They're actually being exceeded on the east and west property line. And part of that is because per staff's recommendations, we recommended taking some of the plantings that were required on the north side and reallocating them to both the east and the west property lines, mainly because there's existing vegetation on the north side. We felt that there really wasn't a need to buffer against any other use in that area, even though there is a berm. If you notice in the landscape plan in your packet, there is a berm that wraps around both the northwest and northeast corners of this property. But we feel between a combination of the fence and a combination of the landscaping and actually exceeding landscape requirements that we're certainly protecting the existing property owners to the east and to the west. It's also important to note that each one of these units is going to have a private patio out their rear yard, and those will be separated from the adjacent units with a similar fence to the perimeter fence. It'll also be a white 6-foot PVC fence. So each of these residents will have some privacy of their own in their rear yard. So the intent, staff feels that the intent of the landscape requirements have been met. However, we did recommend a shifting of some of the plant material from the north to the east and west sides. Let's move on to architecture. On the next slide. I think you can tell from this slide that we've worked real closely with the architect. I don't believe he's online today, but Lewis is the architect, and he's worked very well with us, trying to make sure we were meeting the standards of architecture that we have in our code. You can see that top plan is where we started, and there was a lot of concerns about making sure we had interesting roof lines. We had some articulation along all facades, and probably one of the most important things was to make sure that we had the facade along 150 or 179th, that it looks more like the front of the property rather than a side, because it's designed as a side, and therefore we requested that they wrap around the porch. So if you go to the next slide, I believe it is, it's not in color, but you can see that they provided a fence, or a standing seam metal roof that wraps around the side of the building that fronts 179th, and that helps liven up the street space. My hope is that they'll have patio furniture or whatever on the porch there. It's a 6-foot deep porch. We also had requested they deepen that. The first recommendation was just for a 3-foot porch, and they did deepen that to 6 feet. So we feel that has also improved the architecture of the project. The next slide just mentions the materials. It's not like the old days where we passed around some materials, but you can see that certainly they meet the code requirements for masonry. has a modern touch, bringing in the metal roof, which I think personally that'd be very cool. The colors are very attractive. So that's the building materials that have been provided for your review. Just like the site plan, we do have architectural standards that we look at the plan and compare the proposal to. Basically, that we make sure that we have quality materials, that overall it's a cohesive building design between the two structures. And even though it's cohesive, we certainly look for variety and anti-monotony. We have a defined entryway, and that was especially important to make sure that we were having that street face appear to be a front of a building, and that the mechanical units are all screened. They are in the back by the patio, and they will be screened from any kind of public view. Then the last item for review and discussion will be the two plats. We do have a plat of annexation. That's for parcels 1 and 2. Once they're annexed, then they will be rezoned to R6. And then the next slide shows the plat of subdivision, which combines all 3 parcels into one, and then the subdivision into the 12 units. The next slide just summarizes what our open items are. First being, as I went through the historical context of the road alignments in the legacy plan and why staff is recommending not looking at a road alignment consistent with the plan. The second item is the need for the rear yard variation. As I discussed, they have a 30-foot requirement, and they vary between 13.5 feet to 15. And some of the mitigation of that is the fact that it really functions like a side yard and is adjacent to floodplain, undevelopable property owned by the village with existing vegetation. Third item was making sure that the commission supports the fact that the plan as it was proposed meets the intent of the ordinance and provides adequate buffering to the east and west property owners. And the last is that the 2 plats, which I believe I said, I've had engineering review both of those and have given their approval, but we'll certainly want to make sure that we condition those approvals on final engineering for those proposals. So this is the workshop. I'll take any questions. The public hearing is scheduled for April 15th.
Okay, thanks, Paula. This is Chairman Gray. So I'll ask the commissioners if they have any comments or questions for you on this matter, beginning with Commissioner Gatto. Commissioner Gatto, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. Commissioner Gaskell.
No comment.
Commissioner Manny.
It looks to be a nice little development. Besides that, no comments.
Okay. Commissioner Lasciuto.
I just want to say I do like the carriage walk idea that was provided by staff, and that I do understand staff's reasoning with regards to the side yard is actually the rear yard and that it exceeds requirements, and that the actual rear yard, which acts as the side yard of the properties, just don't abut up against any other developed property. But yeah, other than that, it does look like a really good project.
Okay. Commissioner West.
Yeah, I would thank staff for a very thorough report. And I agree, I have some concerns about being up against the single-family homes, but I think the plan mitigates that. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Again, this is Chairman Gray, and my comments, I do kind of agree with staff's recommendation. For open item number 1, I don't feel that those streets really add, and I know there's different orientations, north-south, east-west, so I think it's okay that that's not quote-unquote consistent with the plan, The fences on the east and west, I think that helps buffer from nearby surrounding properties. And I do, just in general, think it fits that area. I sometimes walk near that area. I know they have those relatively new townhomes to the east off Oak Park Avenue. And I do like what staff presented in terms of the improvement on the side of the townhomes that front 179th Street. So overall, I think it's a nice little development, as I believe Commissioner Manny said earlier. So with that, is the petitioner present? And if so, does the petitioner wish to introduce themselves or have anything they would like to present to the commission on this item?
He's present, but he has nothing to add at this time.
Just thank you for the nice comment.
He said thank you for the comment.
Okay, excellent. We will, seeing no other comments, I will just mention that there will be a public hearing on this item on April 15th, 2021 at the next Plan Commission meeting. So the petitioner can get with staff on how to attend, whether they're in person or via phone. And with that, we will move on to the good of the order.
Just a couple things. Banging Gavel, I know they poured their patio, so they're looking to try and get something going at least out on the patio this year. So good to see them moving forward out on the exterior of that. We have an ice cream shop opening downtown again, so that's good. It's called The Scoop, and so I think they're finishing up and hoping for a soft open here shortly. And that used a facade grant for kind of the redevelopment of that building, so it's good to kind of see it come, the facade grant really come full circle. I think it helped modernize that building quite a bit. It used to have that blue awning and was a salon, and so it's kind of cool to see that, this is kind of what we wanted out of that, right? It kind of helped modernize and make the building look good and attract it kind of like an ice cream shop. So that's good to see that opening up here. Avocado Theory is obviously moving down there as well as South Street. So lots of stuff happening in the downtown, and we like to see that. The planner interviews happened, so they interviewed 4 candidates, and they're going to do a second round here in the next coming week. So they hope to have a planner on board in the next month or two. They'll be working with you guys. We have 2 projects coming forward. The same developer that did the 7-Eleven on 171st in Harlem, that's under construction now. That same developer is looking to do a couple outlot buildings with Starbucks, one to the south of that building, and then another one converting the vacant empty financial on 171st in LaGrange, where Tribes used to be and Frankie's is. So good to see some other redevelopment opportunities happening there with a developer that's already working in town. The hailstorm patio, they have their permit, so I think that happened probably more than a year ago, or maybe a year ago. You guys approved that early on in the COVID days, so they'll have a permanent kind of outdoor patio space that's under construction there. Lastly, Fry the Coop's open, so we have them, and there's another tenant moving into that building as well that I think is like a sweets, ice cream, cookies, or something like that. So that shopping center is busy and is going to have pretty much all food tenants in it, so it'll be an exciting one. So good to see businesses.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, I just keep talking about all these food tenants, so it's good to see stuff's still turning out and businesses are still opening. Obviously, it's a tough time, but there's still uncertainty out there, but it seems like we're moving in the right direction. And then April 15th is obviously the next plan commission, so obviously let us know as soon as you can, if you can't make it. And also, I'll say, I don't think we've ever mentioned, if anybody wants to come in to the village hall, you can do that now. I know Commissioner Gaskell's in here, but just to throw that out there, anybody that would like to come in can always come in person. Otherwise, can still call in for the time being. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Quick question. Where did you say that new ice cream scoop is located?
They actually have it's just to the north of Ed and Joe's, and they actually have a sign up now. So they actually have a permanent blade sign that actually looks pretty good. I have a affection for good signs, so I'm glad they did a nice
Okay.
logo.